Hello everyone. Welcome back to our Fluent English podcast channel. Today we have another lesson that will help you improve your listening and speaking English skills. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like. It really helps us out and ensures you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Your support means a lot, and we appreciate every single one of you. Let's dig in. Hey, everyone. I'm so excited to see you back here on the Fluent English channel. Today, we've got a special lesson that's going to help you sound even more natural and confident in English. We're going to break down a whopping 50 super natural and incredibly useful English phrases and idioms that will make your speech richer and more vibrant. My name is Emma. As you know, I'm an American, I teach English, and my passion is sharing those very expressions that we native speakers use every single day without even thinking about it. I want you to be able to weave them into your own speech easily and naturally, too. And I promise you, all the idioms and phrases in today's lesson are exactly the ones I personally use regularly in all sorts of situations, from casual chats with friends and family dinners to professional conversations at work and just everyday talk. They're truly versatile. Alright then, let's not put it off any longer and dive right into today's lesson. We'll start with a selection of phrases and idioms closely related to actions or verbs. First up, under the radar. Have you ever wanted to do something quietly, so no one notices or pays much attention? That's exactly when you're doing it under the radar. Of course, the origin of this phrase is linked to radar technology. Radars, as you know, are used, for example, in aviation and on submarines to detect other objects in the sky or in the water. So, if you're operating under the radar, you remain invisible to the scanning of those around you. It means to act discreetly. Avoiding attention. Maybe you're planning a surprise or just don't want to draw extra attention to your actions at work. Moving on. One of the most common and polite ways to ask for help is to use the phrase, give you a hand. Hey, could you give me a hand with this? If you ask someone to give you a hand, you're simply asking for physical or some other kind of assistance. Sometimes we also say this phrase a little differently, lend me a hand. The meaning is exactly the same, can you help me? It's a very common and friendly way to ask for assistance. Imagine you're moving, and there's a super heavy box in front of you. You could definitely ask a friend, hey, could you lend me a hand? This thing is seriously heavy. Now, here's an interesting idiom for when you're not quite sure of your abilities but you're ready to give it your all. I'm going to give it the old college try. This is a really curious English expression, and it simply means you're going to try really hard, do your best, even if the task seems difficult or you're doing it for the first time. It conveys the idea of enthusiasm, an attempt to do everything possible, even if you're not confident about success. Perhaps it's a nod to college years when enthusiasm is high, but experience or skills might be lacking. It's a fun phrase to use when you just decide to try something without any guarantees of a brilliant result. You haven't done it before, you don't think it'll turn out perfectly, but you're giving it the old college try. For example, I'm not a great singer, but when it comes to karaoke, I always give it the old college try. I try my best, even though I know I won't become a star. By the way, speaking of karaoke, maybe you've tried singing at a bar or restaurant too. It can be a lot of fun, but also very, very nerve-wracking. Next useful phrase, from scratch. If you start something from scratch, it means you have no preliminary work, no foundation. You're starting from absolute zero. For example, if you had to turn in an essay for homework and you hadn't even started it yet, you could tell a friend, I gotta go. I have to start everything from scratch tonight. This means you're starting with a blank slate, with nothing. But this expression is especially common in cooking. To make something from scratch means not using semi-prepared ingredients, but buying all the ingredients separately, or maybe even growing them in your garden, and preparing the dish at home from the very beginning. Personally, I love baking chocolate chip cookies from scratch. I'm sure they turn out much tastier than store-bought dough or ready-made mixes. Let's keep going. When someone is getting too nervous or angry over little things, you can tell them to take a chill pill. It's important to understand that this isn't a literal call to take some medication. You're just advising the person to relax, get a grip, and calm down. However, be careful. This phrase can sound a bit rude or dismissive if said to someone who is genuinely very upset or furious. Use it wisely. But in a conversation with a friend who, say, is worrying about something trivial, you could totally say, "Hey, you need to relax," or directly, "Could you please take a chill pill?" Or even shorter, "Take a chill pill." Ideally, hearing this, the person can take a step back, breathe, and calm down. A similar phrase, but with a different nuance, which can be a bit tricky to explain, but I'll try: don't add insult to injury. This idiom means you don't want someone to say or do something that will make an already bad or unpleasant situation even worse. Literally, don't add an insult to an existing injury. You can directly ask someone, "Please, don't add insult to injury," or describe a situation after the fact, saying that some event added insult to injury. Imagine you had a terrible day at work, you were late, your computer froze, you forgot an important password. And then lunchtime comes, and you realize you forgot your food at home. You could complain to a colleague. "This day is a nightmare, and forgetting my lunch just added insult to injury." Meaning, this last mishap made an already lousy day even worse, and here's how to say you caught someone in the act: "I caught you red-handed." This vivid phrase means you caught someone right in the process of doing something bad or forbidden. Imagine the culprit has red paint on their hands and has left traces everywhere. You have irrefutable proof of their guilt. A very typical situation with kids: they're always trying to sneak into the cookie jar, even if their parents strictly forbade it. "That's it, no more sweets for today." And then, you walk into the kitchen and see your son or daughter grabbing a cookie from the jar. You can exclaim, "Aha! I have caught you red-handed. I saw you do it." Hold your horses. This is another expression calling for action, or rather, inaction. It means wait, calm down, stop being so impatient. If you haven't noticed, especially in American English, we have a ton of idioms somehow related to horses. I don't even know why that is. So, imagine a situation: your friend really wants to borrow a book you're currently reading. You haven't finished it yet, and they're already asking, "Hey, can I borrow that book?" You can reply, "Hold your horses. I haven't finished it yet." It's just a polite, or not so polite, depending on your tone, way to say hang on, wait a little longer. Have you ever found yourself in a new group where you need to meet people? Maybe it's a new class or a new workplace. And then you have those first, sometimes awkward conversations to break the ice. This phrase "break the ice" means just that: to overcome initial stiffness, feel more comfortable, and start getting to know each other. Interestingly, the questions we ask for this purpose are often called icebreakers. Sometimes it's so awkward to break the ice, especially if you're an introvert by nature. But it's a necessary step for building communication. When it's time to go to bed, I pretty often say something like, "All right, I'm going to hit the hay. See you in the morning. Time for me to hit the hay." This is a very common, informal expression that simply means to go to sleep. We use it a lot in the United States. I'm guessing it comes from the old idea that mattresses, once upon a time, many, many years ago, might have been stuffed with hay. So hitting the hay meant going to bed. And what if you're asked something, and you absolutely cannot remember the answer? Nothing comes to mind. In such a situation, you can say, "I am completely drawing a blank." This is a very polite and common way to admit, "I have no idea," or "I can't remember right now." No information is surfacing in your mind in response to the question. Or, for example, you're talking about a recent meeting: "I was talking to that girl, but I'm completely drawing a blank on her name." You remember the conversation itself, but specifically her name, you just can't recall it, as if there's a blank spot in your memory, drawing a blank. Moving on to fishing, metaphorical fishing, of course. The idiom, to take the bait, means you're trying to provoke a person into saying certain things or revealing some information to you. You might ask leading questions or say something that will push them to disclose what you need to know. For example, you're trying to fish for some gossip from a friend. You ask, "So, how are things with you and Jeff?" And she replies curtly, "Fine." You might think to yourself, she did not take the bait. I was trying to find out about their fight, but no luck. That's one way to use taking the bait. Another example is when you deliberately say something to anger a person or get them to talk about a certain topic, to provoke them. When I explain the meaning of an English phrase to you, I try to give you the full picture, all its possible meanings and different contexts of use. I want to, so to speak, cover the bases. This idiom comes from baseball, where players have to cover all the bases on the field. To cover the bases means to make sure you've considered all important points, haven't missed anything, so that your endeavor is successful. So in this example, by explaining the phrase, I'm trying to cover my bases so you know exactly how to use it, just like a baseball team positions players on all bases. A phrase very similar in meaning to covering your bases is to stay on top of something. In the modern world, especially at work, we're often bombarded with a flood of emails, calls, and tasks. It's easy to forget something or miss an important meeting. If you keep a very detailed and accurate calendar or to-do list, it helps you stay on top of things. You can be sure you won't miss anything and are keeping everything under control. So, if you want to emphasize that you're trying not to forget anything and to do your job to the best of your ability, you can say, I'm trying to stay on top of things. And here's a great way to compliment someone by saying they did an outstanding job, you nailed it. So, I hope that with this English lesson, I've nailed it too. Meaning, I did a really good job for you. This phrase is similar to another idiom, you hit the nail on the head. Both mean that someone did something very well, or gave an absolutely accurate, correct answer to a question. So feel free to say you nailed it, or you hit the nail on the head when you want to praise someone. Excellent, we've covered phrases related to actions. Now let's switch to an equally important group, idioms and expressions that will help you describe people, objects, or situations vividly and accurately. They'll come in very handy in various contexts. If you describe a statement or belief as an old wives' tale, you imply that it's probably not true. It's likely not confirmed by scientific data or facts, but simply passed down by word of mouth for many generations. There are tons of old wives' tales, for example, about how to determine the sex of an unborn baby before an ultrasound. But ultimately, to know for sure if it's a boy or a girl, you'll still need a medical examination. An example of such an old wives' tale, supposedly, girls steal beauty from their mothers during pregnancy. So, if a pregnant woman feels less attractive, she might say, jokingly, of course, that she's having a girl because the baby is taking her beauty. Of course, that's complete nonsense. It's just an old wives' tale. When you want to say that something is very easy to do, not difficult at all, you can use the expression, well, it's not rocket science. This phrase emphasizes that performing the task doesn't require any super intellectual abilities, deep knowledge, or special skills. After all, designing an actual rocket is indeed a very complex science. And the phrase, it's not rocket science, is used to say, come on, it's elementary. For example, when you buy flat pack furniture, it usually comes with instructions. Assembling this furniture, it's not rocket science, although, of course, it might take some time and patience. If you describe a person by saying they have a heart of gold, you mean they are incredibly kind, compassionate, responsive, and loving. This is a very strong compliment. You could say, they have a total heart of gold. They just adopted a boy into their family. It simply means the person is full of empathy and kindness, their heart is as if made of pure gold. You might hear a native English speaker say about a product that it's selling like hotcakes. Hotcakes is another name for pancakes, which, as you know, are very tasty, especially when hot. So, if something is selling like hotcakes, it means the product is in huge demand, people are buying it up very quickly and in large quantities. If you say that one thing is a far cry from something else, you're emphasizing a huge difference between them. It means these two things are completely dissimilar, far apart in quality, appearance, or essence. For example, my singing is a far cry from Adele's, meaning, my singing is very, very far from Adele's level. It's not good at all. Or you could say, though it's not very polite, he's a far cry from a model, he's very far from being a model. He's not handsome at all. These examples might not be the kindest, but they illustrate the meaning well. A big difference, a mismatch. When you want to describe someone as extremely unreliable, someone you absolutely cannot trust, there's a very colorful idiom, I do not trust them as far as I can throw them. Think about it literally, you probably couldn't throw an adult very far because they're quite heavy. So, this idiom means your trust in that person is about as negligible as the distance you could throw them. That is, there's no trust at all. Personally, for example, I don't trust cats as far as I can throw them. I think they're very cunning and have their own agenda. So, if you want to tell someone directly that you can't trust them, you could, though it would be quite harsh, use this idiom, I don't trust you as far as I can throw you. Sometimes, you learn some information or encounter a situation that causes you internal discomfort, an unpleasant feeling. You feel like something is not right, it's wrong or unfair. In that case, you can say, it doesn't sit well with me. Interestingly, this same phrase can be used literally, talking about food, that food didn't sit well with me, meaning it caused an upset stomach. But more often, it's used to express moral or emotional discomfort. If you do something very rarely, say, less than once a month or even less than once every few months, you can use the idiom once in a blue moon. A blue moon is an astronomical phenomenon, the second full moon in a single calendar month, that doesn't happen often. Hence the meaning of the idiom, to describe something that occurs very irregularly or rarely. If you, for example, hardly ever drink alcohol, you could say, I only have a glass of wine once in a blue moon. And here's a way to describe that depressing feeling when you have to go to work on a Monday after a great weekend you really enjoyed. You absolutely don't want to go back to the routine. When you're already at work, and your mood is at zero, you can say, I have the Mondays, or, even more commonly, I have a case of the Mondays. This means you have that typical Monday feeling of gloom and unwillingness to work. After such a relaxing weekend, it was so hard to come to the office. I had a terrible case of the Mondays. There's another really cool phrase to describe a similar feeling, though it's not as widely known, but I really like it, the Sunday scaries. This is that anxious feeling that creeps in on Sunday evening at the thought of the upcoming work or school week, of tasks you don't want to do. If you're dreading Monday, you can say, I have the Sunday scaries. I sincerely hope you don't get Sunday scaries. When you feel like a winner, when everything is going just wonderfully, you're happy and full of energy, you can say, I feel like I am on top of the world. This beautiful expression conveys a feeling of complete triumph, luck, and superiority at that moment. Personally, I love exercising, and after a good run, my mood always lifts, and I feel on top of the world. And now for the opposite feeling. If you're terribly angry about something or someone, if a situation has completely worn you out, and you have no more strength or patience to deal with it, you can exclaim, I am at my wit's end. This means you've reached the limit of your patience and no longer intend to put up with what's happening because it's driving you crazy. For example, I'm just at my wit's end with my neighbors. They're so noisy at night, I absolutely can't get any sleep. We talked about feeling on top of the world. But what if it's the opposite? If it seems like you're constantly unlucky, no matter what you do? In that case, you might say with bitterness, I just can't win. This phrase is used when it feels like you come out of every situation with the worst possible outcome. Can you believe it? This morning all my clean clothes were in the wash. Then I got stuck in terrible traffic. And when I was walking from the parking lot to the office, I got caught in a downpour. I just can't win today. If you see someone looking very sad or upset, and you want to tactfully ask why, you can ask, why the long face? The expression long face is used to describe a sad facial expression. I'm not entirely sure why long, perhaps because the corners of the mouth are turned down, and the face visually appears elongated. But it's a standard way to ask about the reason for sadness, why the long face? If someone let you down, left you in a difficult situation without promised help or resources, you can say, they left me high and dry. Literally left high and dry, like a ship run aground during low tide. For example, you were going to visit a friend, and he promised to feed you lunch. You arrive, and there's absolutely no food at his place. You might, perhaps reproachfully, say, "Wow, you really left me high and dry. I'm starving." This phrase is suitable for any situation where you were left without expected support or something promised. When you're incredibly, just terribly hungry, there's a very common hyperbolic phrase, "I'm so hungry I could eat a horse." Of course, no one is going to or can eat a whole horse, they weigh hundreds of pounds. But, as I mentioned, American English speakers love using idioms with horses. So, if you're feeling ravenous, go ahead and say, "I'm so hungry I could eat a horse." Everyone will understand what you mean. Similar to the expression "you're at your wit's end," there's another idiom meaning the limit of patience. This is the last straw. Sometimes the fuller version is used. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. Both phrases mean that what happened is the very last event or situation you were prepared to tolerate. Your patience has run out, you're very angry or upset, and you won't put up with it anymore. Sometimes people use this phrase to explain the reason for a breakup. That was the last straw. For example, the last straw or the straw that broke the camel's back was that he cheated on me. A terrible example, of course, but it illustrates the point well. The last straw is the event that made you make a final decision, to leave or give up. This next set of phrases is particularly interesting, as they often carry some life lesson or wisdom, usually with a positive undertone. A very common phrase in America, said when someone is going through difficulties or facing troubles, "It builds character." The idea is that overcoming hardships makes a person stronger, more resilient, wiser, and perhaps more compassionate. Personally, I remember my first job in a restaurant. Customers were sometimes very rude to me, and it was unpleasant. But my mom always said, "It's okay, it builds character." Or, "It's good that you have a job like that, it's useful experience." And I completely agree with her. It really does build character. Teaches patience, and gives you greater respect for others' work. Another instructive phrase, "You can't make an omelette without breaking eggs." This idiom means that to achieve something important or to make significant changes, you almost always have to sacrifice something, face difficulties, mistakes, or the dissatisfaction of some people. It's impossible to achieve progress without some losses or negative consequences. What comes to mind is when companies try to become more environmentally friendly, for example, by reducing plastic packaging. And some customers complain, "Oh, my product arrived damaged because there wasn't enough packaging." Well, as they say, you can't make an omelette without breaking some eggs. Some people might not like the changes, and there will inevitably be some negative moments on the way to a big goal. And yes, an omelette is, of course, an egg dish we often eat for breakfast. When you want to tell someone not to exaggerate a problem, not to make a tragedy out of a trifle, you can use the phrase, "Don't make mountains out of molehills." Molehills are small piles of earth that moles leave. And mountains, obviously, are huge. So this idiom urges not to blow a small, insignificant problem up to the size of a huge one, not to panic or worry excessively over little things. A very common phrase we use to encourage each other in America, "Keep your chin up." Perhaps there's a similar equivalent in your language. This phrase is simply a call to maintain optimism and good spirits, especially in a difficult or unpleasant situation. Don't give up, look forward with hope. And finally, let's look at a few very common sayings and phrases that will become your indispensable helpers in live communication. They'll help you react in different situations. If you want to politely tell someone you didn't hear or understand what they said, you can use the phrase, "I didn't catch that." This is a very natural and neutral way to ask someone to repeat themselves. "Sorry, I didn't catch that, could you say it again?" I've got two phrases for you, both meaning to strive for something big, ambitious, even if it involves risk. The first, more well-known, "Go big or go home." The second is my personal favorite, "It's not as common, but it sounds fun, you've got to risk it to get the biscuit." Biscuit here symbolizes the prize, the reward. So, for example, if you're playing a game of chance and wondering whether to make a big bet, someone might say, "Well, you've got to go big or go home." It means either you risk big for a big win, or it's not worth trying at all. Or, if it were me, I'd add, you've got to risk it to get the biscuit. Both phrases convey the idea that for significant success, you need to be prepared to take risks. But, of course, this isn't always wise advice, so don't follow it blindly. If an event or process is coming to the very end, and there's very little time left, for example, in a sports game there are only a few minutes left before the final whistle, you can say, it's really down to the wire. This idiom comes from horse racing, where the finish line used to be marked with a stretched wire. Down to the wire means the outcome is unclear and will be decided literally in the final seconds. It can be used in other contexts too. If you have a deadline approaching for an important project at work, you can tell a colleague, it's really getting down to the wire. I need to finish everything urgently, another great phrase for when you don't know the answer to a question right away. But you can find it out, I don't know it off the top of my head. This means the information isn't stored in your active memory, but you know where to find it or how to check. I don't know all the state capitals off the top of my head, but I can easily look them up. It's a polite way to say you need time or a source to give an accurate answer. A really good English saying is, to see the light. If you see the light in a situation, it means you've finally understood the true meaning of what's happening, or the essence of a problem that was previously unclear to you. For example, if you've been interacting with someone for a long time and then suddenly realized they're not as good as they seemed, you might say, I finally see the light. She turned out to be a liar and not a kind person at all. But this phrase can also be used in a positive way. For example, I really see the light now. I understand why it's so important to eat properly, or I see the light, this new method really works. Here's another interesting and popular English saying, missing the forest for the trees. This idiom describes a situation where a person is so focused on minor details or specific aspects of a problem that they can't see the bigger picture, the essence of the matter, or the main solution. A forest, as you know, consists of many trees. So, if you're missing the forest for the trees, you're concentrating too much on individual trees, details, and overlooking the entire forest, the whole situation. And here's a slightly unpleasant, but instructive English saying, don't spit in the wind, or don't spit into the wind. The meaning is the same. Imagine literally, if you spit against a strong wind, the spit will most likely come right back in your face. Quite unpleasant. So, this saying is a metaphor. It means, don't do pointless, counterproductive things that are doomed to fail or will turn against you. Doing something with very low chances of success or something that makes no sense at all is like spitting in the wind, a phrase I say all the time myself. It's easier said than done. If someone gives you advice that sounds very simple but is difficult to implement in practice, you can reply, yeah, it's easier said than done. For example, I have a young child, and if someone tells me, oh, just rock the baby, put him in his crib, and he'll sleep all night, and you can rest, I can only sigh and say, that is easier said than done. Because, most likely, my baby will wake up immediately, and I can forget about sleep. That's my personal example, but I'm sure everyone has plenty of situations where this phrase fits. I believe that caring for the environment, for example, sorting trash or reducing waste, is very important and right. If someone started convincing me that recycling is good for the planet, I would answer, you are preaching to the choir. This idiom means you're saying something to a person who already shares your opinion, firmly believes in the same thing. It's like preaching religion to a choir in church, they're already believers. If you want to say that something is extremely easy to do, as easy as pie, you can use the expression it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Imagine fish swimming in a barrel, a rather confined container. Shooting them in such conditions would be incredibly easy. Hence the meaning of the idiom, something very simple, requiring no effort at all. If you want to describe two things, or two people, that are a perfect match, go well together, or are inextricably linked, you can say, they go hand in hand. For example, you could say that a love for coffee and early mornings go hand in hand for many people. Or that Americans and rock and roll music go hand in hand, meaning a strong cultural connection, And finally, our last idiom for today. When it's time to do something unpleasant, difficult, or something you've been putting off because you were afraid or didn't want to deal with it, you can say, "It's time to bite the bullet." This phrase means you need to gather your courage and do something necessary, albeit painful or unpleasant. They say it originates from times when wounded soldiers were given a lead bullet to bite on during surgery without anesthesia, so they could endure the pain. So in the United States, for example, everyone has to pay taxes in April. It's not the most pleasant task. You might hear, "I really just need to bite the bullet and get my taxes done." Phew, guys, we did it. A full 50 idioms and phrases are behind us. I sincerely hope this collection will be a valuable addition to your English language arsenal. Believe me, these aren't just random expressions, these are genuinely everyday phrases that will help you sound natural and understand native speakers much better. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, learning. I'd love it if you'd share in the comments below the video which phrase from today's lesson you liked the most, or which ones you've encountered before and now understand better. Your feedback is really important to me. And of course, if you're not already subscribed to the Fluent English channel, be sure to do so you don't miss the new useful English lessons I prepare for you every week. Thanks again for your attention and hard work. Keep practicing, and you'll get there. Good luck with everything. See you soon in the next English lesson. Bye-bye.